Hello everybody, this is Bill, and I'm back here on Beta Movies, and today I wanted to share some insight that I've had the past few years. And by the way, thank you for taking a look at this video. Please like and subscribe down below, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on some of the things that we're talking about. But today I'm just doing this quick video to share some insight that I have on buying film, specifically expired film. A lot of the film that I've shot and that I've shown with the 16mm video that I did and other shoots that I've done, all the film has been completely expired, usually by many years, sometimes decades. So I've got some thoughts on how to do it, and I have a friend of mine who he likes to buy and shoot a lot of film, so I thought I would record this and share it with him as well, and in part to use some of that knowledge. So I would say that the number one thing I would do, obviously you want to know what kind of film you're going to be buying. So we'll take one of the cameras here as an example. Okay, so this is a Brownie Hawkeye, and this particular camera takes 620 film. So if I'm going to be buying anything, it's either going to be 620 or it's got to be 120 film, which has been spooled back on over in order to fit inside this camera. So if I'm going out there, I'm going to be looking for something which is going to fit that particular description. Some of the things that I like to keep in mind is that you can get a lot of great deals online. You can also sometimes get a little bit burned online depending upon where you source your film from. But there's a couple things that I like to do. So when I was buying a lot of film, I would tend to, well, number one, I would avoid anything which uses an outdated film chemical process. What I mean by that is anything related to Kodachrome, anything related to a lot of older forms of Ektachrome. They're usually not usable in the modern context. You can develop them, you can shoot them, but you're going to have to do some kind of fancy footwork in order to make that work. I'll give you an example here. So this is Eastman Ektachrome 7240. And what's interesting about this one was that this is video news film, which was used for a lot of TV stations when they would shoot stuff for the nightly news. They would shoot them on these pieces of film, and they could do them very, very quickly. This was not very good film when they made it, and it uses an outdated process called VNF processing. I think if I look on the back, yeah, it says process, you can't quite see that with the glare there, but it says process VNF1 or RVNP. Now, I know that there's about 2 labs in the United States that will develop this. I think one of them is Yale Film Lab in California, and the other one I think is Spectra Film and Video, which is in North Hollywood, California. So I've actually had some success with developing some of these. It's not going to look great, but it's a very cheap reversal stock, which you can pick up. But just be advised that if you do buy some of this, you'll be very limited in where you can go and get it developed. So you can shoot with it, but if you want to take it to a lot of other film labs, your choices are going to be limited. Just had a quick interruption. I'm being joined over here by my personal assistant and dog, Mr. Scooby, so he'll be joining us for part of this review. So one of the other things I like to do is I like to look for, where possible, black and white film, especially very slow black and white film, does super well when it comes to expired film. I'll give you a perfect example. So this 16mm magazine has Kodak Plus X film reversal, which expired in June of 1957. So this expired before my dad was even born. However, I've shot at least 2 rolls of this, and while compensating for the loss of speed, I've actually been able to get usable results out of this. It's not going to look amazing, but it's pretty impressive that you can do that with something that's actually this old. So this is very low speed film. This is black and white film. And the chemical process which is used to develop this is still around. So the results are pretty impressive. This Plus X, I believe this is either from the 80s or the 70s. Again, the black and white development process for this one and Tri-X, they haven't really changed that much. So these can be developed very, very easily. Again, it's very low speed film, so this is about 50 ASA or so. So because it's a lower speed film, the loss of speed is going to be much, much slower versus if it's a higher ISO. So if the film speed is like 400 or 500 or so, then it's going to show the results of those aging a lot more than something like 50. Does that make sense? In other words, like this stuff, you needed a lot of sunlight in the first place just to make this work versus something like a 400. So this is going to show less results of that entire aging process than something like a 400 would. Now, if you do use color film, so I've got a couple pieces here. So this is Kodak Plus 100, and then this is a 126 film. This is 35 millimeter. This is 126. Now, 126, it's not even really made anymore because it uses a specialized cartridge, so it's not really a choice here. But what I would do with all films, but especially color films, is I would normally, if I'm buying this on eBay, I'll ask a couple different questions. Now, this particular roll, I can tell you, because I remember buying this. I believe it was an estate sale, which was in Virginia, and whoever owned this particular house, they were a photographer. There was photo gear everywhere. And what was interesting about these rolls was that they were stored in a cool, dark basement, which is probably one of the best places that you can store film unless it's been frozen. So I knew where this was coming from. I knew that it was stored correctly. And because it's a color film, it's going to be more susceptible to that aging process. So the best thing to do is to ask, let's say if it's on eBay, okay? Ask the seller, do you know the history of this film? Do you know where it came from? And most especially, do you know how it was stored? Was it stored in a cool, dark place like a basement, or was it stored in a hot place like an attic or a garage? Because if the film is stored in a place which doesn't have a stable temperature, doesn't have kind of a cooler temperature, then what's going to happen is, like, let's say if it's in a garage, then, it gets hot and muggy during the summers, gets really, really cold during the winter. Well, over the course of, let's say, 30 years, that increase in the temperature, that's going to obviously affect the film a lot, and it's going to influence the sensitivity of it, especially if it's a color film. Color is more susceptible to color shifts, and the chemicals won't quite work right when it's developed, and you'll get lots of weird effects. So definitely ask where it's been stored and what the history is of it. If you notice, let's say on eBay, if the film is being sold by someone who has a lot of camera gear, well, those people probably know their industry, and maybe it came from the estate of a photographer, in which case it was probably stored correctly. It was probably kept in the right kind of place and in the right kind of environment necessary to be able to make sure that it stays at a stable temperature. A couple other things. So I've got a couple black and white films here. So I like buying weird stuff sometimes, and sometimes I'll buy stuff which came from the Eastern Bloc. So this film, Orwo NP 2022 or NP 22, this is East German film stock, and what's interesting about this is that this was made in East Germany before the Berlin Wall fell, and I wouldn't say it's the greatest film stock, but I actually like it a lot, and I found it to be very stable and consistent, and it seems like it was pretty well made. And I've actually had some really interesting shots using this. Sometimes you'll get some degradation in the image, but I actually kind of like that, and I find it's kind of interesting. Now, this is FEMA film, which was manufactured in the USSR. This was actually manufactured in Ukraine before the fall of the Soviet Union. You can actually see on the back there, CCCP. Yep. And This stuff I've had mixed results with. I don't quite know how it was stored or if it was even well made to begin with. So I've had some mixed results with this. I've shot, some stuff which was 100 speed, which actually came out really well. And, but I've had other ones where the colors are all kind of, or not the colors, but the black and white image, it's kind of got different spots on it. So it can be a bit dicey, especially if it's coming from the Ukraine and, it's been so long, you don't know how it was stored or what the condition was. So just be careful with these, and if you are going to buy it, just don't spend a whole lot on it. But they can be kind of fun to shoot too. Just don't spend a fortune. So another one I was going to show you, Polaroid film is kind of in its own separate little category, because most of the stuff, the original Polaroid film, there's two different kinds. So you have what's called peel-apart film, which is what you'd use in the camera behind me over on this side. Over on this side. So you would put this stuff in there, and this is a whole different chemical process. And but this film can be very, very interesting. And then you have, I'm just looking at my desk here. So this is a Polaroid Go picture, and what's interesting about it is that this is using the, what's the process called? Okay, this is called integral film, and then this is pack film. So what the difference is that when this is shot, there's a negative and a positive which are sandwiched together, and then you pull those apart, and then you get your print. With this stuff, the photo is complete. So the negative and the positive, the whole image is right here. There's nothing else which is done with it. Now, this is using a tiny Polaroid Go, by the way, which wasn't around a long time ago, but you get the idea. So the difference between these is that the integral film does not age very, very well. It's much, much more susceptible over time. And pack film is also susceptible over time, but in my experience, buying smartly and asking questions, I've actually had a lot of success with these. Now, this is an expired photograph, or an expired film photograph that I took right around Christmas. And I've still been able to get results with these sorts of photos, and I've had a lot of fun with them. I don't recommend spending a whole lot on these, but if you have one of these pack film cameras, there's no other choice which you would have to buy film other than to get it in the original pack film style. I think that One Instant, they have a project right now where they're doing pack film or one instant shots that you can get, but generally speaking, pack film is going to be a lot harder to find. But I'll give you a tip on how to buy that stuff as well. So this is a package which I bought some years ago, and this film expired in December of 1996. So it comes in a package like this, in a foil package. Okay. This one might have a problem. Okay. So this is actually a good point, and unfortunately this has been in my fridge for a bit. So it looks like it seems like it's dried out. So something that you want to ask the seller, first off, you want to check, obviously, the expiration date. So if it's a closer expiration date to us today, there's a better chance that it'll work right. If it's something from the 80s or the 70s, it's probably bone dry. But what I would ask a seller is, I would say, okay, first off, is the package sealed? The second thing I would ask is, do you know how it was stored? Just like we asked with the other film. The third thing I would ask is, can you shake it, and is there a sandy sound? Now, unfortunately, this package is a dud, but if I put it near the microphone and I shake it, hear that kind of maraca sound? What that is that those are dried chemicals which are on the inside of this package here. So most likely, this is a dead pack of film, which is unfortunate. It never got shot. But if I take this one, well, I think I hear something. And this one, I definitely hear something. So the chemicals in here have dried, and this pack is probably rusted. And just to prove that point, I'll open it just so you can see what that looks like. Definitely has that chemical smell. Oh, this is a shame. Yep, it's definitely rusted. Yep, there it is right there. Oh, there you go, you can see it right there. This guy never stood a chance, and he's got a rusted staple on it. So, if I were to open this up, I would most certainly find dried chemicals from inside this package, which is unfortunate because if it was a couple years ago, I probably could have shot this one. But sometimes this happens. Definitely has that chemical smell, though. Well, takes you back. Anyway, so just be very careful with these. Don't spend a fortune on them because there's a good chance that if they're not stored correctly, then this will happen. And sometimes even if they are stored correctly, this can still happen. This format, I don't think you're going to be able to find it in a few years. But if you are hunting for these, again, just ask, how is it stored? Was it in a cool, dark place, or was it in a refrigerator? Was it in a climate-controlled place? Do you know where it came from? And can you tell me, is there a sandy sound? Because if there is a sandy sound, then that means you got a dud. Anyway, I think that covers most of it. As far as the going back to the integral film, if it's something from the Impossible project or it's Polaroid originals, I've been able to have stuff which has been expired by a couple of years and it still works okay. As far as the integral stuff, just be very careful with it. Just don't spend a fortune on it. And when it comes to expired film, I mean, sometimes we shoot it just because it's a bit more economical or because it's the only one that we can get. But use your best judgment. And there are other guides out there worth checking out. Again, have fun with it and hope to see you guys back here. Thanks for checking this video out.